I understand the concern around the Packers cornerback room without Jaire Alexander. And part of the reason is they've built this secondary unlike any team in the league. It breaks people's brains.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts. You will find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. There is a group, not even just a group. There are fans, there are media, there are folks who are still worried about the Green Bay Packers cornerback room. And they do it because they look at the depth chart and they go, Carrington Valentine, Nate Hobbs, Keyshawn Nixon? Question mark? Is that really the group they're going to trot out as an NFC contender? And I understand why it breaks people's brains. I really, truly do. Because it was hard for me to reckon with last year as well. I'm sitting there going, if they don't have Jaire Alexander, they can't win in the postseason. And by the end of the year, I just didn't believe that. And we saw in the Eagles game, Keyshawn Nixon, Carrington Valentine, Javon Bullard, this group of corners blanket those Philadelphia receivers. Jalen Hurts always coming back from a concussion. Oh, he's a little rusty. No, guys aren't open. Watch the game. Guys are not open. The one play that worked, Dallas Goedert went beast mode and ethers Carrington Valentine, but that's not because he was wide open. He didn't route anybody up. He didn't create separation. No, he's just bigger and stronger than the Packers guys trying to tackle him. There's not a corner out there where you're like, oh yeah, that guy in that situation is going to do really a lot better. So when you look at it, you go, well, the talent. I don't know about the talent. You look in Philadelphia, they've got more talent in that cornerback room. Now, as you look around the NFC, I don't know that like the Detroit Lions, who are built somewhat similarly to the Packers in terms of, they've invested at corner, but their corners are not great. DJ Reed was someone I wanted the Packers to look at. But their safeties save them. That's how the Packers play too. Their best players are their safeties. Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams, that's one of the best safety duos in the NFL. And the comparison that I keep making is you go back and you watch those early 2010 49ers teams. You do not remember who played corner for them. You remember Dante Whitner, who's been on the show a couple times. You remember Deshaun Golson. You remember Justin Smith and Aldon Smith. You remember Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman. You can't tell me who played corner on those teams. And this is a team that wanted to play a lot of three deep. Okay, those Seattle teams that were awesome playing that single high cover three style. They had Richard Sherman, right? But the other corner was a rotating cast of characters, and anyone who watched that team closely, and even the guys on that team will tell you Earl Thomas was the reason that defense worked. How many teams tried to copy that Legion of Boom defense and found out you don't have Earl Thomas? Well, the Packers kind of do. And so you look at this group and you go, no, come on, they can't do this. They're not good enough. They're not talented enough. In the playoffs, you need those matchup erasers. Except you don't. You don't. coverage is a weak link system. And I harp on this because it's so important. It is not how good your best players are. It is how bad your worst players are. And the Packers' worst players on defense are their corners. Or at least their backup corners. I think Nate Hobbs is a really nice player. And I think Javon Bullard in year 2 is going to take a step forward as the nickel. And Keyshawn Nixon was fine last year. Was not actively hurting the team. Yes, in the big games, there were times when you go, if that's not Keyshawn Nixon, if that's Jaire Alexander, you're probably going to get a better outcome. You hope that in year 2 with Javon Bullard, he gets more opportunities against a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown. You have Nate Hobbs for someone like that. Even though he is a big physical corner, he has elite movement skills for a player his size. So when I say it's a weak link system, what I mean is if you have no one to attack, that makes it difficult for defenses to hunt matchups. Because a lot of what playoff football can become is like playoff basketball where it's we want to find this guy. We want to isolate this guy and win that matchup constantly. But the problem is teams are too good. If you start trying to throw to one guy on one matchup over and over, by the way, you can start playing sides. You can start sending help. There's just so many ways defenses can respond. There's only so much you can pick at those wounds. So that's why if you have one place to pick at, that's better than if you have 2 or 3 places to pick at. The Packers don't really have a place to pick at because if you want to go after those linebackers, which you can do in this defense, you risk going at those safeties. And Evan Williams and Xavier McKinney have put the league on notice. You have to be careful around those guys. This Packers coverage group as a unit was 4th in Pro Football Focus grade last year. A top 10 passing defense by DVOA. They were a really, really solid unit. And I say the word solid not to damn with faint praise, even though it kind of seems like that. But they weren't a group that you go, oh, they're just locking everything down. It's Patrick Surtain, it's Darrelle Revis, it's Charles Woodson. No, they didn't play like that. And yes, they feasted on turnovers a lot early in the year, but then as the year wore on, they didn't have as many turnovers and they were still really good because they were well coached. They were disciplined. There were some penalties. They were 20th in penalties. That's not great if you can get that number down a little bit. But this came up because we were talking about a comparison that I've made before with Baltimore and Buffalo. And I said, rank those teams. Buffalo, Baltimore, Packers. Take the QBs out. Rank the rosters. And I had people say, look, the Baltimore secondary is just so much better than the Packers. Okay. They have more names you recognize. Nate Wiggins was a first-round pick. They have Jaire Alexander. We'll see how many games he can play. Kyle Hamilton's really, really good. Marlon Humphrey has been really, really good. Last couple seasons, it's a little bit up or down. It depends on the role. Kyle Hamilton clearly depends on the role. And then they're going to rely on Malachi Starks, a first-round pick, who everyone was just like, yeah, of course Baltimore's going to draft that guy, but that's a big question mark. Okay. How good are your best players versus how bad are your worst players? Well, the Packers had a better coverage grade last year. So you wanted like the DVOA and the EPAs, they over-index turnovers. Well, what about the grades? The Pro Football Focus grades say the Packers, with less talent than the Ravens, played better coverage last year. Now, linebackers are part of coverage too, but the Ravens had Roquan Smith. So it feels weird. I get it. To look at the roster and see a 7th round pick and a guy they signed to play special teams who's a kick returner who they've just kind of elevated, and he is Peter Principled his way to being the starting boundary corner and is a fine player. And then they signed Nate Hobbs, who they expect to be a difference maker for this defense. But it all goes back to what they are able to do with those safeties. And again, They just don't have anyone where you go, that guy's going to just get cooked game after game. They don't have a Kevin King on this roster. They don't have an Ahmad Carroll on this roster. And that makes it a lot easier to play defense. Now, would I like another guy, another veteran player who you're sure if they lose a Carrington Valentine, all of a sudden you're looking at down the roster? Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Doesn't seem like that's coming. We'll talk about that next on Locked On Packers. The baseball season is heating up, and every game brings clutch hits, standout pitching, and unforgettable moments. From walk-off homers to no-hitters in the making, there's no shortage of drama on the diamond and no better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before first pitch and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Plus, you can combine live prop bets mid-game and really amp those odds up. Play smart, win big. Who wouldn't want to play a little same-game parlay, especially in the dog days of baseball season? Get a little excitement in there, plus $200 in bonus bet to add to the excitement if you hit that first $5 bet. New to FanDuel? It's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Brian Gutekunst did an interview that came out yesterday and was asked about the cornerback position and basically said, we're excited about the guys on the roster, which is, that's de rigueur for Brian Gutekunst. I've made the case that they probably need to add some depth there, and maybe they will. Season's not over. It is a risk to go into training camp and say, hey, Micah Robinson and Kalen King and Kamal Hadden, you guys are one injury away from being a starting boundary corner for the Green Bay Packers. I guess 2 injuries away. Because if Key or Hobbs go down, it's Carrington Valentine. But there's Dime. Someone's going to have to play some snaps here. And you want to have some flexibility with Nate Hobbs, being able to put him in the slot in certain matchups. Well, if one of these boundary guys goes down, all of a sudden, that becomes more difficult. And so Micah Robinson, 7th round pick, we got to see it. Kalen King, 2024 7th round pick, we got to see it. Kamal Hadden, street free agent, 2024, we got to see it. Now, I know Hadden had some fans, even in Packers media coming out. We don't know what to think of him because we haven't seen him, really. Those 3 guys, chances are, at some point, one of those guys is going to have to play. And this is complicated by the fact that Kalen King has really only ever been a slot corner. When they needed some corners because of injuries in the middle of last year, it was guys like Robert Rochelle out there trying to make it work. Not Kalen King. Now, Kalen King also injuries, and so that's part of the deal here. But this is thin. So everything I said about this weakling system and, they performed really well last year. Yes, all that is true. But it's only true so long as the players make it true. So if you don't have anyone to pick on defensively, great, until you do. And to have the only options back there be Hadden, King, and Robinson, that's a gamble. So even if it's Stephon Gilmore, someone like that, an older player who may be content to just come in and be a backup corner for you. Gilmore actually played last year, and he might be waiting. I would be surprised, frankly, if the Packers went into the season with this cornerback room the way that it is right now. They don't have the flexibility, I don't think, And they don't have the size. Like Kalen King's undersized. Michael Robinson is undersized. And that's just, like, especially if you're going to be a special teams player, you have to play special teams. Kalen King is not tiny. He's 5'11", 190. But it seems like they want him in the slot. If you're a slot corner, what kind of opportunities are you going to get to play special teams? You'd rather have like a boundary corner, a bigger player running down on kick coverage, those kinds of things. Now, could the Packers go into training camp, kind of see how this goes, feel it out? You're in contact with some of these veteran options, and then, you know, if these guys don't play to the potential, if they don't play to where you think they need to be, you do something about it. Yeah. I mean, I could see them doing that. It's also, remember, they signed Devondre Campbell, for example, in the middle of the summer. Nothing was even going on. Signed him. And they picked Russell Douglas off a practice squad in the season. So there could be opportunities at cut down. There could be more veteran cuts for the Packers to get some players to add to this room. The room that they have currently is more or less what they had last year to end the season. Keyshawn Nixon, Javon Bullard, Carrington Valentine. They add Nate Hobbs to that group. So that is already providing a little bit of depth because you have Carrington Valentine either competing with Keyshawn Nixon to start, or if they're going to go with Nate Hobbs in the slot, playing the boundary in nickel. And then you're trying to figure out what comes next. The shrug emoji is not good enough. And, you know, you added a corner in free agency. You drafted a corner, and you're still sitting there going, you know, it'd be really nice to have another corner. Well, part of that is you moved on from Jaire Alexander, so that's a choice you made. Who knows? Gregory Jr. has been a player that there's been some discussion about. He's at least been an NFL player. Practice squad in Jacksonville, practice squad in Indy, practice squad in Houston. That's a lot of practice squads since 2022. Never really been a player. That's better than literally nothing, which is what you're getting out of a rookie. And that's better than nothing and injured, which is what you're getting from Kalen King. But right now, it seems like the Packers are content to stand pat on this. I would guess that is very much a for now. That is a temporal state. That is very much for now they are willing to stand pat. Now, they've done well hitting on some of these late round guys. Like if they get a Carrington Valentine level player out of Micah Robinson or Kamal Haddon or Kalen King, then you're fine. But that is something that we have yet to see. And so unless and until we do see that, I think they need to have the bat phone ready. Even if it's not a veteran to come in to start, just someone who has played, shown they can be a playable rotation NFL corner. Everyone's kind of looking for those guys, by the way. I would have just kept Robert Rochelle. That would have been my plan. They wanted to get younger. How long can you keep doing that? It's a question we go back to here all the time. How long can you keep betting on youth and development before you need to go, hey, you know what would be great? Having a guy we know can play. That'd be nice. And they have the money to do it. Now, speaking of the money to do it, Brian Gutekunst also said there's some contracts that they're working on. We'll talk about that next on Locked On Packers. As part of that interview, Brian Gutekunst mentioned that the Packers are working on contracts with Quay Walker and Zach Tom. The Walker one is interesting because they did not pick up his fifth-year option. Now, part of that is his fifth-year option would have made him a top 5 highest paid linebacker. That money is guaranteed. I think some of these options are prohibitive in some cases, where it's like, yeah, we'd like to keep this guy, but the amount of money that it is at certain positions is just doesn't make sense now. This would be a reason not to take linebackers in the first round. One of many reasons not to do that. But that's just me. That's just looking at, plus EV and contract value and all those things. Like, yeah. But it does seem like the contract was, the 5th-year option was declined because they want to put together a contract. Now, it's interesting. Names he didn't say. Rasheed Walker from that draft class, who is a starting left tackle for the Green Bay Packers. And I think that tells us what we need to know about what's going to happen here. And it is weird. It is weird. And it must be weird to be an NFL player. And you hear your general manager saying, we're going to take care of Zach Tom. We're working on that contract. We're going to get that. We think we're going to get that done. And you're the other guy. And if Zach Tom, in all likelihood, if Zach Tom gets that money, you're not getting it in Green Bay. Now, maybe it doesn't matter to you. Maybe if you're Rasheed Walker, you're like, I'm going to get that money somewhere. And he is, by the way. He is. Someone is going to pay him a lot of money next offseason. But this is also why it makes sense to give Jordan Morgan every opportunity to win that left tackle job, because you don't want to go into 2026 with a never have I ever left tackle. Now, maybe you're fine, Anthony Belton, in year 2. Jordan Morgan becomes your right guard. Maybe that's a circumstance that makes sense. We've talked about that a lot on this show over the last couple of months as since the Packers made that draft pick. But it'd be nice for Jordan Morgan to win that deal. It'd be really nice for Jordan Morgan to win that job. Now, the money is interesting because the Packers do have a tight cap in 2026. You look at the highest paid right tackles in the league. There are 3 guys that stand above everybody else: Tristan Wirfs, Penei Sewell, and Lane Johnson. $25+ million. I don't think that Zach Tom can command that sort of money. But then there is this group after that. Titus Howard got 18.6. Michael Onwenu got 19. Juwan Taylor got 20. The Chiefs probably regret that one. Brian O'Neill got 18.5. Spencer Brown got 18. Mike McGlinchey in free agency got 17.5. Zach Tom has been pretty clearly a better player. I think 18 a year is the floor for Zach Tom. Taylor Moton got 17. Terrence Steele got 16.5. Like, these are guys that are not in the same class of players as Zach Tom. So especially because he plays right tackle, you might be able to get him at a relative discount based on his true abilities. Because you look at the left tackles, there's more guys making over 20 million or 20 or more million. Ronnie Stanley, Taylor Decker, Deion Dawkins, Garrett Bowles, Dan Moore Jr., Jordan Mailata, Jake Matthews, Andrew Thomas, Laramie Tunsil, Christian Darrisaw, Trent Williams, all making 20 or more million dollars. I'd rather have Zach Tom than Dan Moore Jr. all day. But here's the thing. I'd rather have Rasheed Walker than Dan Moore Jr. Rasheed Walker is going to get, as a left tackle, $20 million on the open market. So if you give Zach Tom $20 million, you're not going to give Rasheed Walker $20 million. And they're going to go into training camp knowing that. You don't want lame duck players. Elton Jenkins does not want to be a lame duck player. He is old enough and wizened enough to know, you're not doing this to me. Rasheed Walker, by the way, doesn't have a choice, does not have the same sweat equity that Elton Jenkins does. And maybe he is just oblivious to it. Maybe he's just, I'm just going to go out and ball and I'm just going to do my thing. And whether I start all year or not, there's enough tape of me for teams to go, yep, we'll pay that guy. And there's incentive for him to win this job because it probably is the difference in him getting $21 million a year next year and him getting 15. If he doesn't play all year, if he's not the starter, if Jordan Morgan wins that left tackle job and then he doesn't play, He's not getting the same deal. It's just not. There's a lot of money at stake this season for Rasheed Walker, just in training camp, just over the next 8 weeks. Jordan Morgan could get hurt. He got hurt last year. But it's got to be weird, man. It's got to be weird. Once Zach Tom gets this extension, it's kind of over for you. Now, that's not the same case with Quay Walker. I don't know where they land with Quay. I really don't. You could tell me that he signs some sort of like 3-year, $30 million deal. TJ Edwards kind of deal. You could tell me he gets the Robert Spillane, the 3 years, 33. Aziz Al-Shaair got 11 per year, 11 and change. It's 3 years, 34. There's a bunch of guys making like 10, 11. There's a couple guys at the top making the 20s. That's not going to be Quay Walker. Tremaine Edmonds got a big free agent year deal, $18 million. Zach Bond just got $17 million after being an all-pro. Patrick Queen having his best year ever, got him 13 and change. Would you do 2 years, 28? That seems like a lot for Quay Walker. Now, if he goes out and has a great year, yeah, I would pay him. I think this is going to be the kind of thing with Quay where you kind of have an idea. Hey, if you go out and play this season the way you played last year, you go out and you have the first 6 games, first 8 games, like you had last year to end the season, that stretch in the middle of the year before you got hurt again. You play like that for 6 or 8 games, we'll give you a contract. And by the way, he will be worth the contract. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't expect this contract to get done in the preseason. I could definitely see Zach Tom because they don't need to see, I don't think they need to see anything else with Zach Tom. He's their right tackle. And they've always liked Quay Walker more than me, certainly, but more than the consensus. And so this could be like, remember when I think, Rashawn Gary got his deal in October. I don't think they needed to see him, but it helps. Aaron Rodgers, once upon a time, got his deal in October. 6 games. Like, this front office has a history of doing this. Come out. We've got an idea of where we think you can be, what we think you're worth if you play the way we think you're capable of playing. So go out, show that, and we'll give it to you. I think that's smart negotiation, by the way. Because Quay Walker has not proven it in the NFL. And we know that any deal is going to be 2 years and then we'll see. And I'm happy to give Quay Walker 2 years and then we'll see. Just not for $18, $20 million. All right, back next week. We've got Joe Thomas on the show next week. We've got Peacock and Williamson. I did a long show with them. So that's coming next week. It's really interesting to get their insight. Brian Peacock, our Locked On 49ers host, and then Matt Williamson, who is a former NFL scout, Pittsburgh Steeler guy. Those two guys have their show, Peacock and Williamson. And so we've got a great conversation coming there as well. 3 shows next week, 3 shows the following week. Summer hours for the next 2 weeks. And then we'll be back at it post July 4th as we get you set for training camp, the Packers 2025 season. Let's go, baby. Follow me on the social medias, Peter_Bukowski on the X Machine and on Instagram. You can follow the podcast wherever you get social media. We're on all the places you can find us. You can subscribe to this podcast wherever you get podcasts. You could watch us over on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube page where you can stay locked on Packers.